we had just learned that the Titans had been experimenting on dragons and had essentially turned them into the Servants of Order, the servants of the force that invaded Azeroth. Neltharion, with a very unique perspective of it, probably was the first to learn this fact, and he has been trying ever since to balance Titan and Old God magic in order to break free from this entire slave mechanism. This led to him creating a private army to distance himself from the aspects and using both Titan artifacts and Old God powers. Allegedly, Deathwing had imprisoned the Draktyr because he couldn't control them, but the reality is that they were witnesses to him using Old God powers that Nosdormu could see through, and now obviously they had to be hidden. Nosdormu is of course only using Titan magic, and back in Legion, Xal'atath told us that the Old Gods are literally just obscuring Titan visions. While Deathwing was ultimately turned completely to the Old God side, this is a lot more than just a simple corruption storyline that he was just insane and he was mad. I think Deathwing had learned what was really going on, and now we are set to finally learn the same thing in Dragonflight as well with our own eyes. If you guys are looking to buy Dragonflight or anything Warcraft related, Gamivo has some amazing sales that you can check out with my link. On top of that, you can get software, gift cards, various games at crazy prices. Best of all, you can use my code DORON to add yet another discount to your purchase, so make sure to click my link below, check out Gamivo, and grab some amazing deals. The storyline that we have that everyone knows is that Neltharion was the noble aspect, the strongest of these dragon protectors of Azeroth that unfortunately became a victim to the Old God Whisperers as he found his burden too hard to bear, and since then he has literally just been nothing but an irrational mess, doing nothing but evil things and 100% serving the Old Gods. Now, while obviously there is some truth to that storyline, I feel like this is a significant oversimplification, and with the recent fighting as Dragonflight, something entirely different might have actually been going on. The lore that we knew showed us that Neltharion had turned into Deathwing 10,000 years ago around the time of the Sundering, but the Dragonflight Legacy series showed us something completely different that literally just changes his lore from the ground up. By our current knowledge, the entire Draktyr locked up scene that we had seen in the defeat of Raszageth happened approximately 20,000 years ago. So naturally, when we make up the difference, it implies that Neltharion, while being normal and appearing normal, he has been wielding Old God magics for 10,000 years. Now, I feel like with these gaming universes, we really start to overlook years. We got 10,000 here, 10,000 there, but I mean, just imagine what 10,000 years actually is. Like, in the real world, we haven't even been using writing for that long. So, Neltharion has been using Old God stuff for quite a long time, and I think it was safe to say he was successful because he wasn't corrupted in this period. I think it will be rich for us to judge him when pretty much half of the playable classes do the exact same thing. We wield the Fel, we wield the void magic and all sorts of dark stuff without corrupting us, and really that comes to the skill of the individual caster. Now, most recently in Legion we can see in Illyria embracing the void, so really it is just a force like any other. It's only forces like the light and the order that completely demonize it because it is obvious in their strategic interest and they want to get rid of it so they can rule. Now, the thing about the Void, it's sort of like a can of worms. It is in structure, it doesn't show one true path, and this can be devastating to beings of order because they just cannot fathom that alternatives exist and that their holy and order crusades are not the end-all be-all. They could even actually be wrong. This is why these forces are so adamant to destroy. Now, the thing about Deathwing, as we can learn from Dragonflight, is that he was a being of order, a being enhanced by order, but in his core he was elemental in nature, and we had seen that elementals are kinda chaotic, so that is why he might have been able to bear it for so long before it did ultimately turn him insane. I mean, we can't really argue that Deathwing had all his marbles by his final days back at Cataclysm. However, the most interesting thing in my opinion, and that I feel like is going to be a huge part of Dragonflight and WoW in general, is why he even decided to turn to Old God powers. We have seen from the animated series that this wasn't pure void, like in the pure sense of the word, but Old God stuff because there are tentacles in the background, and the Old Gods are like the intermediaries, like the weapons of the void. So, while technically wielding the void, he is still serving the Old Gods, as it seems like Neltharion was tapping directly into into their power. My answer to this is that I think Eltarian found out the real truth and he was convinced. I think he learned that the aspects are ultimately just Titan weapons and he was the first to rebel against the Order, but not openly until a really long time had passed. When you think about it, Eltarian was in a really unique position as he had an incredible connection to the Earth where the Old Gods are, and who knows what else is under the ground that the Titans might have even not known anything about, and therefore they were able to influence him. And in my opinion, the word influenced might be the one to use, because saying corrupted would definitely be something the Titans would say, like, because in their eyes he was corrupted because they turned him from their purpose into another purpose. Now, of course, rambling aside, this is just my random speculation. If you guys can follow the storyline in Dragonflight, we go into Tearhold where we run into the actual laboratories of Tyr the Titan Keeper that was literally using native proto-drakes as test subjects, and he has been doing all sorts of crazy stuff with them. He has been inverting their natural elements, infusing them with all sorts of powers, and there is even a speculation that he may have been behind the actual creation of Galakrond. Long story short, it makes sense. In the questline, he ponders whether there is an element that the native dragons cannot possibly absorb, and later down the line, he blames himself for what happened to Galakrond, but he never really elaborates why he's blaming himself. After that, we have another chamber where he had created the dragon aspects, with one of these obviously being Eltarian. There is another theory that the Primal Incarnates may have been the original aspects created by Tyr that he just goofed around with, and it was like a failed batch, so he decided to discard them and create a new one from scratch. Now, I'm guessing as the Old Gods had obviously interfered with Tyr's experiments by corrupting Galakrond, in particular Yoxeron, it is likely they continued the tradition and interfered with newer experiments, the aspects, as they had shown Eltarian what he really was. I mean, he was given the role of the protector of Azeroth, the noble dragon in charge of safeguarding the good in the world, but the Old Gods had shown him what was really going on, that he was literally groomed by Tyr to become a follower of the Titan Order that literally invaded Azeroth and to protect their creation so that the Titans can win the cosmological war. In the grand scheme of things, Eltarian really was enslaved, but in like a super sophisticated way, sort of like a Matrix type scenario. Now, I gotta say, it is definitely a bit confusing because when you think about it, by this logic, he would be turning to the Primalists in order to revert back to the original order, but instead, he used Old God powers to defeat them and to preserve the Titan Order. But I feel like there is just another piece here that is missing in the entire puzzle. I feel like Eltarian here was taking on a task that was way bigger than him, and ultimately, he failed, sort of like an Illidan type scenario. He tried to wield everything that was at his disposal to potentially break free, and honestly, when you think about it, this really makes sense. He knows the others cannot understand, so he decides to create a private army using Titan powers and Titan artifacts, but at the same time wielding the exact opposite Old God powers, pretending to still be on the Titan side and using this magic for his own good. So I feel like for a while, Deathwing was standing on the fence and trying to build his own thing, but when he realizes just how mind-bogglingly crazy this entire cosmological struggle is, he started to feel more and more powerless, and the Old Gods, obviously doing what they do best, successfully turned him to their side and played exactly on those fears that ultimately led to him actually being corrupted and turning into their actual pawn. So him trying to create a Dragon Soul was according to the original Break Free plan that was ultimately overtaken by the Old Gods. The Old Gods even confirmed this on multiple occasions. We have a Zealot at Whisper that says the Fallen Aspect's lair is near. He was the strongest of them, yet the easiest one for us to corrupt. Now, you may be thinking, if he really just realized all this Matrix stuff, couldn't he have just told and explained to his fellow aspects what was really going on and to break free? And I think that really would just ultimately have been impossible. They were not shown those visions, they were really dug into the Titan mechanism, and they didn't really know what was going on, and they would all probably trust Nosdormu, who allegedly can see all the possible scenario. But personally, I think the entire Nosdormu thing is literally just a meme. I mean, seriously, think about it. The guy was given this superpower by the Titans, who themselves couldn't see the future, and their entire order on Azeroth broke. They were all defeated by Sargeras. They didn't really see this coming. Then we had Elisanda back in Legion using the Eye of Amantul, Titan power, to see the future where the Nightborn would survive without the Legion alliance. Now, Xal'atath laughs at this as an Old God being, saying how her attempts to see the future are undermined by outside forces, meaning that the Old Gods probably blocked it. Now, I feel like the same thing, exact same thing is going on with Nosdormu, and that the Old Gods have been playing with his superpower the entire time. It honestly really makes sense when you think about it. Did you think it was weird that Nosdormu just managed to learn through the Dractyr about how Deathwing had used all god powers like just now 20,000 years later? It seriously was super easy to block, and it's really just limited Titan abilities. Furthermore, this also explains why Deathwing can actually imprison the Dractyr. It wasn't because he couldn't control them without a Titan artifact, but because they were all witnesses to him using all god powers, and they now had to be locked away so that Nosdormu couldn't see through them what was actually going on, as now Neltharion would have 4 aspects turned against him and his ultimate plan would be doomed. So I really think Deathwing was like the original Illidan, but like a failed Illidan that ended up being corrupted by Fel. Like, imagine if Illidan just used the Fel and just turned into a demon. He might have tried something way out of his power range and ultimately succumbed to the stronger powers. Of course, at the moment, all of these are speculations, but I think this is going to be the focal point of the Dragonfight and even later down the line. Thank you for watching. Check out N'Zot's mind-blowing plan by clicking on the screen, and check out N'Zoth Academy for videos on real-world history. See you next time.